This week on Sprague Woodturning, we use some more fabulous cherry burl, get creative in mold making, of course use the vacuum chamber, and come up with a brand new style that I've never done before to make this incredible cherry burl bud vase. Hope you enjoy it. Hi everybody, welcome to Sprague Woodturning. My name is Jim. If you haven't been here before, this is predominantly a turning channel. Each and every week I show people how to make things on the lathe. This week we're going to be working with some more cherry burl. This is some pretty gnarly looking stuff. It is really not good for anything but casting with epoxy, and that's what we're going to do with this. And I think at this stage I'm going to make a bud vase, a really large bud vase. That may change, but as it stands right now, I have a bud vase idea in mind. But it still needs to be cleaned up, so let's head over to the lathe. We'll get the flap sander on and figure out what we're going to do for a mold after we get this cleaned up and ready for casting. So who doesn't like cherry burl? I would say the cherry burl is probably my number 2. Walnut burl, of course, would be number 1. But of course we're using the flap sander here. This is made from old belts from my drum sander, and to be perfectly honest with you, it's probably one of the best flap sanders that I've ever owned. So if you got some old belts kicking around from your drum sander, you can certainly make a good flap sander with it. And there you go, ready for casting. Alright, so this is what we're going to use. This is craft board, Ross craft board. Sure. And I'm just going to roll this up in it. That'll be the tightest mold that we can do. I'm not going to close it in on the top here because I want to make sure that, you know, I want all of my options left open here. So I'm going to run a bead of glue down here, and then I'm going to remove this and tape it too. Then we'll figure out exactly what we're going to do on the bottom here. First off, I'd like to apologize for that terrible noise. I didn't realize that it would be so loud on camera. So that's the first thing. Yeah, I've never used this material to make molds with, so we'll see how this goes. I haven't had great success making molds like this though. This is just going to take a minute or so. I've never used this stuff to make molds with. I think that you can get the kind of the board material that's more plastic, and it's got kind of, I don't know, like ribs in it, if you will. And I think that it probably would be better than this. This stuff was a little bit more fragile than I had anticipated. I didn't think that it would be as fragile as it was. So that's really the only knock on this stuff, and the fact that it really didn't roll up all that nice either. That was kind of the other thing that doesn't make it all that great for mold making. Just an old scrappy piece of plywood I got laying around. So I'll just draw this out and go over and cut it off in the bandsaw, and then that way we can put it up inside and glue it and tape it, and then we shouldn't have any leaks. But we've been here before a number of times. And what I'll do is I'll cut on the inside of this line, and then hopefully it'll fit in there pretty decently. Let's go to the bandsaw. So it always works best if you turn the camera on before you start something. Anyway, there it is. There, hopefully I'll be able to get this off the table after this glue sets. Probably should have put down a piece of paper towel or something like that, but oh well. I'm sure I'll be able to get it off. Oh look, I lost some more of my table. I am going to replace this here very soon. I'm just kind of waiting on something to get done, and then I can replace it. Anyway. So I do use a ton of duct tape on this. I have in the past tried to use tuck tape. That's the vapor barrier tape, and I do find that between the two of them, that actual duct tape seems to work the best. And of course glue it down because we definitely don't want this piece to float. A bit of a blowout there, that's fine. That's what the tape is for. One thing's for sure, when you're making molds like this, when you think that you've got enough tape on things, double it up, because you'll be shocked at how easy these things can leak. And of course, got to cut this down. It's just way too tall to fit into the vacuum chamber. There, that's going to give us a reservoir at the top. I haven't measured my pressure pot, or sorry, my vacuum chamber, to see if this is going to fit though. That could be an issue, but I think it will do 16 inches, but I need to double check that. Regardless, let's mix up some epoxy. This week we're going to be using deep casting epoxy from Designer Epoxy. If you've been around for a while, you know that this is my go-to deep casting epoxy. And if you want to try it, you can use my code INLAYGEM at checkout for your discount. Okay, in this casting we're going to use silver black, Hypershift, gold red, light purple, and gold green, green, orange, red. So that's the other Hypershift that we're going to throw in here as well. So one word about mixing Hypershifts, I do find that, of course, the more you put in there, the more contrasting shift you're going to get. So keep that in mind if you're going to buy some of these. I typically will put more of the Hypershift in than I will any other color. So after measuring my vacuum chamber, I did have to cut this down or else it's not going to fit in there. Now I realize that maybe what I should do is pour a little bit at the bottom here, let it solidify, and then we know that the bottom seal isn't going to leak, but honestly I don't know how it can. I shouldn't say that, but anyway, I'm going to send it and hopefully there's no issues. I must say that this does look very coppery now, but regardless, if that is the case, we haven't done that before, so here we go. I know it's very hard for you guys to see where the level is, but oh yeah, we're over halfway anyway, so that's promising. That we're not going to have to use a ton of epoxy here. It's just hard for me to get some lighting here. Anyway, I'll mix up another one and we'll be right back. So I added a couple of pieces of tape here. Since I cut that off, I wanted to make sure that it was wrapped around the top so it can't split open. This is another 1.5 liters, but it's certainly, I don't think it's going to take all of this. But after we're done with the vacuum chamber, I'm sure we're going to need to add more. I'm going to stop it right there. Unfortunately, it looks like we're not going to be able to use all of this. Regardless, this will be at least 12 inches tall. All right, let's get a vacuum chamber, and when I'm all set up, I'll bring you back. Okay, here we go. Well, it looks like we got a leak down there. I don't know how that's possible, but where is that coming? Oh, I see where it's coming from. It's actually coming from that piece of that hole in the side. Man, how much tape do you got to put on that? Well, I might as well add the rest of this now. All right, let's hope that we don't get any more leaks again. Turn the shop lights off so you can see better. All right, here we go. So if you haven't noticed, I taped the entire outside of this piece, except for right at the very top, in an effort to make sure that there's no more issues here. And if you haven't seen this process done before, I'll explain it briefly. Essentially, you submerge the wood in the epoxy and you pull a vacuum on the piece. Well, that sucks all of the air out of the wood, and then when the vacuum is released, that wood draws in that epoxy and for the most part, stabilizes the wood. Well, that's only about 23 inches of vacuum. If I'd had more space on the top here, then I might be able to pull more than that. So I'm just going to stop it there, let it sit for about a half hour or so, then I'll pull another vacuum on it. I'll probably do this for about an hour and I'll bring it back when we're ready to go into the pressure pot. So that has been, well, it's almost been 50 minutes. So I'm just going to release the vacuum here, throw this, well, I've mixed up another 3/4 of a liter here. I don't know if I'll use it all. If I don't, I'll just throw the rest of it in my globe molds. And anyway, this is going to go into the pressure pot, and we'll see you guys in 72 hours. I will definitely fill this all the way to the top. Well, good afternoon. All I want to do today is get this out, and yep, see down in there, we had a blowout. I can't believe it. I don't know what to say about that. I put so much tape on this. I'm just a little surprised by it. Now, full disclosure, I took this out of the pressure pot, I think 2 days ago. And the epoxy at that time wasn't fully set. I don't think it still needs to sit maybe another day or two, but it's probably fine. And I heard a pop. And it was, you know, I'm used to kind of the sounds of the workshop and when I'm working with epoxy and pressure pots and vacuum chambers. So that was an odd sound to me. And what I think happened was, and we'll get this out, have a look, but I think the bottom, I don't know if there was like a big air pocket trapped in there and it blew out. I don't know. Regardless, it's going to fall right out because it's not even attached. It's really too bad because this, the amount of epoxy that leaked out here would have really topped this up. I think that it would have been really close to what we wanted. Shows a little leak there. That one stopped, so that's not it. Again, a little bit of a leak there. I don't think that this is it though. It's hardly anything really. So I don't know, it remains a little bit of a mystery to me. So I don't really know what is going on here. This is a little flexible still, as you can see. There, you know. That's got some pretty cool looking epoxy in it. So I'll save that and, you know, break it up into chunks and we can throw it into future projects. Now, the reason why I think this epoxy is so flexible is because the clean room in there was actually pretty cool. So I think that that's the main issue. But I'm still a little baffled where it leaked from. Maybe the bottom here. It's so hard to tell. Regardless, this is still going to give us some, my tape measure. Still probably going to give us a 9-inch tall vase, so that's not, that's pretty good. I think that we're still good in that regard, but it would have been nice if it was all the way to the top. I am a little concerned about this down here because when I cut this off, I don't want to be driving into a void here. Let me try and measure this, see how far it goes down. Yeah, so it goes down a little further than the epoxy level does, so I think we're going to be okay there. Anyway, I'm going to leave this one more day, and we will throw this on the lathe tomorrow. So this is in fact the next day, so we're going to have to cut this down so that we can safely melt this on the lathe. And this is just my round cutting jig that I made. Works great. Well, we lost a little bit of material here, maybe 1/4 of an inch, but it was important to get down past this to make sure that, or down past this, so that we had a good surface to push on. On the top side here, it's actually pretty round, but of course on the bottom side, it's not. To me, it wasn't a big deal because I knew that I was going to be making a thin neck vase, so it wasn't absolutely crucial that it was perfectly round prior to mounting it on the lathe. Yeah, that's probably about as good as it's gonna get. Imagine that, slapping your knuckles. I don't think anybody wants that happening. Starting off here with the number 3 Hercules from Hunter Tool Systems, link in the description below. Love this tool, working with epoxy, it is fantastic. A lot of these tools were designed for end grain turning, but in this case the Hercules is more than just an end grain turning tool. This is an absolutely fantastic tool, especially when you're working with epoxy or other really harder materials like stone. So I'll throw that in there as an example. And you know, some of these, you know, these hardwood burls, when they're dry, I mean, they're just, I swear, sometimes it's like turning concrete. There's probably no difference between them. So this is where these carbide cutters really come into play. And again, Hunter Tool Systems, link in the description below. Now, my intention with this was to make a bud vase, and that is what I do with it. But if you've been around for a while, you'll know that, you know, that's never a guarantee. Once I get things on here and strip things back to basically raw wood and epoxy, then, you know, I've been known to change my mind. So, but in this case, I do stick with the bud vase, and I'm glad that I do, because it's absolutely beautiful, beautiful piece. And actually, maybe one of the nicer pieces that I've made in cherry burl in a very long time. But so far, things are cutting nicely. Again, another panned out view, body position. You notice that my right arm is leaning on the tool rest. I'm not saying I'm leaning on the lathe, but it certainly is giving me some support. That way I can get a steadier cut, and it also takes the strain off your body. So as you watch me do this, I'll briefly talk about last week's video. And last week I did 2 natural edge bowls. One was a maple burl and one was a curly maple bowl. Lots of interest in the maple burl one. People thought it was a really neat look, and they are. In the end, you know, it's just really not my style of turning, but I do know that my customers like them, so I make them. And interestingly enough, and this is, you know, things surprise me from week to week, and there wasn't even one person inquire about the curly maple bowl. I had lots of interest in the maple burl one, but I never even got one email on the curly maple bowl, which I thought was actually nicer than the other one. It's just funny, people, and I mean, this is one of the things that makes us really unique as humans, you know. Just because I like it doesn't mean somebody else does. And but anyway, that bowl is still available. If you're interested, send me an email, spraguewoodturning@gmail.com, and I will disclose the price. But you know, it was a cool video, and thanks to those that watched it. Views were down on it, just like whenever I do these natural wood videos, the views just don't seem to be there. So, but anyway, if you missed it, I will link it at the end of this video. Anyway, check it out. I thought it was nice. I thought it was a cool video. I think we've got some really nice epoxy hidden away in here. So let's hit it with some denatured alcohol and see what we're looking at. Oh yeah. Well, it's like there's a straight line down there. Beautiful. Big, long flowing streaks. That's pretty cool. Yes, sir. It's kind of not contrasting color, it's kind of a color that goes with it. So be interesting to see what you guys think about it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to use this as a glue block. Never ever use plywood as a glue block because these can delaminate and just fall apart quite easily. If this was cast in epoxy, which it wasn't, remember, it was sealed off, then you might be able to get away with it. Even then, I'm still kind of hesitant. So I'm going to just put a little shoulder here, change my jaws out. We'll hold it with the chuck here, and then we'll get a glue block on the bottom and get rid of this. But anyway, I think that is, yeah, look at that. Love it. Now, I was seriously tempted to take this and more or less make a straight walled vase with it. I'm sure there's going to be some comments on that because, I mean, it really is, the wood is nice and the epoxy is, well, in my opinion, the epoxy is spectacular, to be honest with you. It really is. But, you know, when I get something in my head here, I definitely want to try and do it. And going into this, I thought that a bud vase would be, you know, a really cool project, and I think that it is. But it easily could have been, you know, like a utensil holder, even though I'm trying to move away from utility stuff like that. I much prefer to try and stick on the artistic side of it. So that's why I ended up going with a vase this week. Just going to rough this up with some 60 grit before we dip this waste block into a vat of hot melt glue. Lots of volume, and you won't have any failures. Also, sanding with the 60 grit certainly will help with that as well. I should mention that that is a white birch glued on tenon that we're going to make here. And again, when you're making your tenons, make sure that they are shorter than the depth of your jaws, so that the top of the jaws on your chuck rest on the bottom of the piece you're working on. Now, this is a really small tenon, but the reason for that is because I want to put a relatively small foot on this. So that's why I went with a really small tenon. But it is, it is not very robust, and no doubt could easily probably be busted off. So now that we've got this reversed, of course, we're going to have to clean it up again. So, you know, I'll briefly talk about my workshop. Been some people wondering, you know, what do I think about it so far? Is there anything that I would change? I'm loving the space. There is certainly a lot more walking involved in this workshop because it's considerably larger than my old workshop. In my clean room, one alteration that I've done, they did pipe in a heating and cooling vent, and I have since closed that off. Your clean room needs to be basically still with no air movement, and even though I was putting things away in a little cupboard to dry for finishes, it just wasn't really, well, it just wasn't really keeping the dust out. And look at that. Yep, this is going to be some really nice epoxy. And that Burl, man, look at that Burl. She's awesome. So yeah, there's a few things in my workshop that I've changed. The lathe is now bolted to the floor, so it's a lot more steadier. I can pick up speeds when on work that's a little bit more out of balance. Still have an order shop equipment between. Yeah, we got some drywall to deal with here. A little surprised that the epoxy didn't get to that. But yeah, I've got to get some equipment ordered. But you know, I've been doing a lot of video at the house, so I'll talk about that here in a few minutes. And just trying to still sort out my workshop and make content for you guys each week. It's been very, very busy. I'm trying my best. I feel like I'm neglecting my member section, but I just, at times, I just really, it's when I get home at the end of the day and I've offloaded my camera. Yeah, there's still some issues there. That, I need to just relax and not think about YouTube constantly. I never thought that it would be, you hear about YouTubers getting YouTube burnout, and it's definitely a thing. But I really like shooting content for you guys, and I definitely want to be here each week. And yeah, I mean, it's just been a very busy summer, and I'm really looking forward to finally getting into my own home, and getting back to a normal routine. It's just been busy, but we're getting through it, and in the end, it's going to be a really nice place that we're living in, and it's just going to take a lot of effort to get there still. Hopefully by Christmas. We'll see. So I did have an idea in my head as to how this thing would look. I definitely wanted to make the top part of it, the opening of the vase, smaller in diameter than the bottom round part that you're seeing here. But as far as the bead and how that ended up in there, well, that just really come about with what I'm doing here. And I said, well, I was cutting down. I'm like, well, I wonder if we should leave that. To me, it initially looked like maybe it was going to be a little out of place. But, you just never know until you get things on the lathe and start whittling them down. And a lot of times, the piece will tell you what it wants to be. There, I could have easily stopped there. To me, that looks like maybe like a Roman pitcher of some sort. Something like that. But, I wanted the neck to be thinner. All right, well, what do you think of our shape so far? Yeah, these dry rot spots, we definitely need to address these before we do an epoxy coat. This is very typical of cherry burl. If you've never worked with it before, lots of little voids. Well, it's it's pretty normal for most burls. So you're going to have these little voids within the burl. It's not a big deal, but the dry rot, yeah, that's definitely something that we need to worry about. A little bit up here at the rim, kind of really struggled to, I don't know, I might make this smaller. Do I just swoop it in like this, or do I leave it like this? Choices, But I think that, that's kind of cool. I don't know what that is, like a old bug passage maybe. That's pretty awesome. Tons of character in this. All right, so we're going to use the Flash Bond Thin from Designer Epoxy, and of course, the accelerator. Now, the reason why I'm using this and not just relying on the epoxy coat, I don't know how deep this is. This is thin, almost like water, so it will really migrate deeply into this. And then with the epoxy coat over top of it to fill in all these little holes and voids, I might even hit these with the CA glue too. And then, when that goes on, the epoxy coat goes on, hopefully this will be good and solid already, and then we won't have to worry about, sanding tomorrow and then divoting this out. For the non-turners that watch my content, what I'm referring to is, so if you've got a soft area like I'm, putting the CA glue on now, and I leave that, when you power sand, it will really divot the wood out in that area. So it's important to try and solidify that as much as the surrounding wood is. That way the divoting doesn't happen. It makes you wonder where we would be without thin CA glue like this. Anyway, if you want to get some of this from Designer Epoxy, please use code InlayJimCA, and that will help with the channel. I'm going to give that about 10 minutes, and then we'll be back at it. Now, of course, CA glue is basically instant glue. What crazy glue used to be when it first came out. But, it doesn't cure instantly. It does take a while to cure, especially if you've got it if you put a lot of it into a soft area like where that dry rot is. So you got to really give this stuff some time to set up, or else you're going to be wearing it. It'll be all over your glasses, all over your shield, and all over your clothes if you don't let it cure before starting to trim it back. So here you're going to see this bead develop. And again, you know, I think it's growing on me, but you know, I easily could take it off and be happy with it too. That's the Scotchy gouge combination, skew and gouge. There's a link in the description to Lee Valley. That's where I got this one. You'll also see me use a parting tool here to clean up little shoulder areas down below. Yeah, so anyway, as you watch me do this, I'll give you a little update on the house. The foundation was poured yesterday. Finally. We finally have a poured foundation, and the ICF, and also for the garage, so happy days on that. And there you go. I mean, I'm really liking the look of that epoxy. It goes well with the Burl. Colors are nice. For the most part, I'm happy with the shape, except for the bead. I don't really know. I'm still very undecided. Would you have kept it? That is the Badger Cub straight tool. It's a great tool to work down in the little foot area where I'm doing this little cove. Due to the tool geometry of the large Hercules, it's very tough to get down there and do those types of cuts. So that's where one of these tools really comes in handy. But of course, the opening at the top, yeah, the Hercules will eat that up easily. So as you can see, the steady rest is now in place. Wouldn't think about doing this without the steady rest. And the plan right now is to just go in and groove out the top portion of this. I'm not going to be doing the body on this. And after I get the hole drilled tomorrow, I'm not going to do it until tomorrow because I'm worried about the epoxy pooling in the hole after I drill it. We're going to put this glass insert in. And then that way that will go in there, and then you can, you know, put a flower into it. You'd have to fill it up every day because it's not much volume for water. But yeah, I mean, I've never made one of these before. I got these from Craft Supplies USA a long time ago. And, well, I just haven't really used them. But anyway, we're just going to groove this out a little bit, and then we'll get to sanding and do our epoxy coat. I did turn the RPM down to 1,000 here. If you're curious, it was at 1,230 before this. Anytime that we're on the steady rest, I typically don't want to go any higher than 1,000. It probably would be fine, but I don't know, in my mind, I just don't think that it's a good practice. But maybe that's not an issue at all. So anyway, we're just going to give the illusion that this is a normal vase. So when you're looking at it, you're going to think that the whole thing has been hollowed. These are the 2.5-inch double discs from sandpaper.ca. Besides the 3.5-inch, they also do make these. And of course, they're great for little projects like this. Now, I still can't get right into the very bottom of this, but it certainly gives you a head start on sanding, that's for sure. And again, fabulous sponsor. If you're looking to get some sandpaper supplies, head on down to the description and check them out. Sandpaper.ca. So now that the steady rest has been removed, the top part is sanded. I still have the live center in the area where the tube is going to go. So I don't really care if it marks up that area. So that's what's supporting the top part of the vase. We're just going to do a final trimming on this, and then when that is done, then of course we will sand the outside of this piece. Now, because of all of the imperfections in the wood, there wasn't really any issues with epoxy. No thermal cracking this week. Epoxy performed absolutely perfect. But of course the wood needs some filled in areas, so we're definitely going to be doing an epoxy coat on this. Again, just touching up that bead with a Scotchy gouge. As far as the outside is concerned, I'm going to sand this from 60 to 180. Again, I just don't see the point in going any higher if you're going to be doing an epoxy coat. So that's why I typically stop at 180. This is 3 ounces of the Pro Series from Designer Epoxy. And a silicone barbecue brush. So nothing new here. You guys have seen me do this a number of times. And again, you know, I kind of use the brush as a squeegee almost. And you know, for the most part, I really don't get much for sagging or drips in it the next day. Well, what do you think? That epoxy is awesome. The Burl is awesome. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, you know, we whittled away a lot of this. Sacrifices had to be made. I am not 100% sold on the bead there. I don't know. I might have to get rid of that. I'm not sure. Tell me in the comments if you'll keep it or if you'll get rid of it. I think that, you know, it's just going to make the vase look more sleek, but I don't know. Definitely never haven't done anything like this, so yeah, that epoxy is just amazing stuff. Those two Hypershifts, you can definitely tell the two colors. Like when I look this way, it's gold, and when I look straight onto it, it's purple. It's a really neat effect. So there, you can see some purple in it, some gold at the bottom. And then when you turn it like this, see how it looks almost all gold? Maybe this will be better this way. Nah, it's lighting it up differently. Anyway, it's really cool. Love the Hypershifts. Definitely give them a try. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow and we'll figure out if we're going to keep that bead or not. It's actually dry already, right there. Put it back on the lathe. Anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Well, good morning. That's what we're looking at the next day. Yeah, there's some dull spots here and there, but for the most part, it's still shiny. And hoping that I can show that Hypershift off better here. Right here, I think this might be the one. See how it's kind of gold there and more purpley. So cool. When it comes to sanding these epoxy coats the next day, you know, sometimes I'll drop it down to say 120 if I stopped at 180, but this time around I didn't need to. There wasn't really hardly any runs or sags, so there's really no need for that. So it was sanded from 180 to 800, and we're kind of doing things a little backwards here because I haven't drilled this out yet. So this is a 5/8 Forstner bit, and as you can see, it's not very long. So once I've reached the maximum depth of this, then I'm going to switch it out to a spade bit. The issue with the spade bit that I had wasn't that it just barely was able to do the job. So I put it in normal depth as far as inside the chuck is concerned, but I was about a ½ inch short, so I had to pull it out, and it was really only being held by, say, 1/4 of an inch inside of the Jacob's chuck. So something seriously could have gone wrong here. Luckily it didn't, and we get it, and that's the main thing. This is what we're going to be using. Waterlux's Universal Tung Oil Sealer. And mainly what I want to do here is I need to seal this up. So I'm just going to take the sealer, put it down in here, swish it around, and then dump it back out. And that should give that some protection if water does happen to get by the tube that we're going to put in here. Yeah, I mean, I don't really, you could, if you wanted to, put epoxy down in here, and then possibly that would, well, it wouldn't be possible. It certainly would seal it up. But if you get runs in there, then how do you correct it? I suppose you can drill it out again, but I really don't want to have to do that. So I'll get out as much of this sealer as I can, and then we'll throw it on the outside of this. It should really bring this alive. You may have noticed that I did not buff after 800, and that is correct. I'm just trying a little experiment here to see if the sealer performs better on raw wood or wood that's actually been buffed with the Triple E prior to using it. And there it is in its sealer coat. If I can get some light on the situation here. Oh, cherry burl is really nice. I'm going to miss that living here in the east. Anybody who lives in eastern Canada that's got a line on some cherry burl, let me know. Maple burl, all the burls, let me know. I'm buying. And what do you think about our bead? I don't know. I'm still a little torn, to be honest with you. Let me know in the comments if you would have kept it or not. Fabulous Hypershift. We'll see you tomorrow for, well, what could quite possibly be the first coat and only coat of original. Man, this looks so nice. I am tempted to leave it. Nope, I'm going to wipe it off. It says to wipe it off, so I'm going to wipe it off. Well, good morning. Very matte finish, as one would expect. So I'm going to buff this with the Triple E this time around, and we'll get our first coat of original on it. That's the Triple E buffing compound, and we're going to be using a buff from the Burl buffing system. And I get all of my supplies at Lee Valley here in Canada, and they do ship to the US. And don't forget that denatured alcohol. Here's what I'm using, Waterlux Gloss Original. Now I do put 2 coats of the original on here, but honestly, I probably could have got away with just 1. We have probably not a huge difference from yesterday. It's still amazing. And the bead is growing on me the longer I leave it on here, so I think it was the right decision. Certainly made things more complex to do, but you know, fellows should always be working on his beadwork. Yeah, again, you know, look at that epoxy. Wild. And that burl ain't bad either. All right, that's going to do it. We'll do the foot here tomorrow if it still stays nice and shiny. Yeah, if it needs another coat, I'll do the next coat the same way I did this one. Other than that, see when we're doing the foot. So what I have here is a piece of pine, and of course pine is soft, so it's not going to mark up our vase. So I just turned it down just so it fits nice and snugly in there, and I found center on the waste block. And we're just going to use the Ellsworth gouge to whittle this away. Once that's done, I'm going to use my air-powered right angle sander to finish the majority of the bottom. And then once that's done, I'm just going to pop this little piece that's glued on, get rid of that, go to the belt sander, grind down the majority of this, and then go back and finish it with the air-powered sander. That's going to do it for the video. A special shout out to the members. Thank you so much for your support. Let's have a last little chat about this beautiful little vase. Well, you may hear some banging in the background. They're stripping the forms off of the foundation right now, so that's what you're going to hear in all likelihood. Well, what do you think? Cherry burl, you can't go wrong with cherry burl. Such a pretty wood, and that epoxy, that Hypershift. It's amazing stuff. If you haven't tried it, you definitely are missing out. Really, really nice piece. The more I look at the bead, the more I like it, but you know, I'm probably good with removing it as well. So it'd be interesting to see what you guys think about it. Bead or no bead? Let me know in the comments. Here he is, the very bottom. I just basically signed wherever I could. Trying to stay off the black because you'll never see it on the black. The size on this, 4.5 inches at its widest dimension and 7.5 inches tall. It's really a shame. We easily could have put another 2 inches on the top of this, but you know, it just didn't work out just the way it is. Always trying to find new mold making materials, and I don't know if that's a good one. It really kind of punctured quite easily. The more plasticky stuff, I think I might try that next. And it's just like cardboard, so you should be able to wrap it quite nicely. That stuff, it just didn't want to wrap nicely. Anyway, this is for sale. If you're interested, send me an email to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com and I will disclose the price then. Should show you down here in case it is a gift. Let me know. Don't forget to put designer epoxy in the comments down below to be entered into the next 3-gallon giveaway at 145,000 subscribers when we get there. And of course, that's only open to continental USA and Canada. And by commenting down below, you'll also be entered into my giveaway. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, comment away. And if you are the winner, when we get to 145,000 subscribers, it's taking a long time to get there. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, I will ship it to you at my expense. What else? Yes, designer epoxy summer sale is now over. However, you can still use my code InlayGym for your discount, and you'll still get a fantastic deal when you use my code. So please go ahead and do that if you want to get some more epoxy. Next week, next week is going to be well, it's going to be a tabletop, small tabletop. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get the whole thing done. I still need to find materials to make the base. So anyway, that will be next week. I don't know if it's going to be a complete project or not. It may be a two-parter, but we'll have to see. All right, well, thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. And of course, that thumbs up will really help with the analytics, and we definitely need that more than ever to help push my content to others. And of course, by sharing my videos on your social media platforms, that is the largest or the quickest way for me to grow here on YouTube. And I would greatly appreciate it. All right, well, that's it. I'm out of here. Have yourselves a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you back here next week for at least a cool tabletop. But hopefully it'll be a whole project. But we'll see.